Welcome, travelers. We're aware that your journey was difficult, but prepare to have your questions answered, for you have been granted an audience with the Masters of Modern.
And welcome back to the Masters of Modern podcast. I'm your host, Ben Bateman, joined today, once again, by friend of the show, co-host of the show, one-time producer of the show, Michael Grothy.
Hello, everyone.
It's a slow clap. I'm happy to have you here as a guest. This is a big episode. Oh, just kidding. The guy clapping off camera, that's our producer, Marshall. Marshall, how are you?
I'm wonderful. We got a preview card today.
It's a preview episode today. These are always exciting ones. We're so fortunate that Wizards of the Coast grants us, obviously for free and just to help support the show and share with the community, these preview cards. Every few months when a new set comes out, we are gifted these amazing preview cards that we get to share with you guys. And this is an exclusive show. We're going to be premiering it here for the very first time. I think this is like our 10th or 12th preview card now.
There's been some good ones.
Yeah, I mean, some of the greatest hits are behind us here. We got Night of Autumn. We got Fatal Push. We got some favorites of mine like Merfolk Mistbinder and Claim Fame. Isolate. Just kidding. How
much better would Isolate have been if it was just new Kaya's -1? If it hit any non-land permanent with a mana cost 1 or less. So if it could take out tokens and 0-cost artifacts.
If it could take 0-cost artifacts and tokens, I think it marginally better. What do you think?
I still don't think anybody would play it, but it would be better.
I think you could comfortably you could have that card in your sideboard in Modern because you would be able to. It would come in enough matchups that it would be like a relevant sideboard card as a one of, versus like right now it's very good against what it's good against, but it's just irrelevant against everything else.
Yeah, it's just too narrow of a sideboard card. Like you're not going to play it main, and as far as sideboard cards go, there's like a million other cards you could play in that slot. That
the weird thing about Isolate is though you just never know. Like if it costs 1 and it's instant speed, you just never know. Like that card could be worth 30 cents for 2 years. And then all of a sudden it would be the absolute best sideboard card and shoot up to $12 overnight.
It's true.
It's just what happens. So anyway, guys, this is the Modern Podcast, the Masters of Modern. We talk about Modern on this show, and we introduced everybody. It's a preview episode, as I mentioned. Quickly, I want to remind everybody, if you want to follow along with the show, there's a couple things to do. You can find me personally at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter. You can find our Twitter at the MMCast. There's a sweet Facebook group with like 5,000 people in it. Go check that out. Michael, where can the folks find you?
I'm on Twitter at Dudard, D-U-D-A-R-D-D, and I'm also one of the moderators of the Facebook group, so I check out all the posts there. I don't post on it that much. I'm more of an observer and, read it for fun, but I'm there.
Sweet. You are. You're here, too. I'm excited about it. We have Marshall, obviously, is here from Time Traveler Media, which is his company. It's an amazing company that helps us run this show, which is a recent addition that we were able to add because patreon.com/the MMCast. You guys are so generous there to help us be able to actually bring a producer in. Marshall, if the folks want to follow along with what you're doing, Magic or elsewhere, where do they find you?
Well, if they want to follow me, I'm at Marsh Unfocused on Twitter, and you can follow my company, Time Traveler Media, at timetravelermedia.com.
Check that out, guys. So today on the show, we are talking about this preview card. It's a sweet card, and I'm going to get to it in just one quick second. But before I do, I want to tell everybody here about a contest. Alex and I have talked about it. He signed off on it. It's April Fool's today, but this is not a joke. This is a real thing. It's a real contest. And what we're doing is we are going to be giving away something. And I can't tell you what we're giving away necessarily yet because it relates to the card we're about to preview. So stay tuned through the preview, and immediately afterwards, you're going to hear an ad roll because that's what we have to do to keep the show running. And as soon as that's done, we're going to talk about the giveaway. It's super awesome. You should get in on it. Stay tuned for that. So I think we should just get straight to the preview episode.
Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, preview card. That's
Awesome.
what we're all here for.
Yes. All right. So our card. It's a white card.
Ooh.
Yeah, there you go. It's a white card.
Isolate reprint.
Isolate has been reprinted into another set. They've given it to us a second time as a preview card.
It's our brand now.
It's their way of letting us know there's a 1-mana planeswalker in this
Masters
set
of
somehow.
Isolate.
Masters of Isolate. Yeah, we are the Isolate show. So our card is called Gideon's Triumph. Michael, how much does this card cost?
1 and a white.
1 and a white.
Instant.
It's an instant speed card. It's an uncommon from War of the Spark.
It mirrors Gideon's defeat in that way.
Yes, and this one says, target opponent sacrifices a creature that attacked or blocked this turn. if you control a Gideon Planeswalker, that player sacrifices 2 of those creatures instead. Very dispense justice-ish, but it costs 2 instead of 3.
Which is good.
Yeah. Now, first thoughts on this card. What do you think, Michael?
Well, it's potentially a 2-mana 2-for-1 if you have a Gideon in play, which there's not a lot of 2-mana 2-for-1s in Magic, particularly not in Modern, and it affects the battlefield, which is relevant. I mean, like Knight's Whisper is a 2-mana 2-for-1 in Sign in Blood. They don't get a lot of play, but it's because they damage you and they don't affect the board. So in a lot of matchups, you're just dead.
So it compares to what's the card? Collective Blessing?
Yep.
Yes.
So it compares to Collective Blessing, which is that's the Escalate card from a couple years ago. It's kind of in that vein. It's kind of in the Condemn or like Oust vein. Like I said, Dispense Justice is a card that has similar text.
Yeah,
Wing
works.
Shards.
Wing Shards, not in Modern, of course, but yeah, in the target player sacrifices a creature vein.
Yeah, I mean, it works well as like a defensive removal spell, similar to Oust or Condemn or something like that, because you can make them sacrifice a blocking creature, but generally if they've blocked and then you're playing a card to kill their creature rather than like moving it out of the way so you can get in more damage, it's like way less efficient that way than if you're like making them sacrifice a creature that's attacking you so that you can not take damage. Is like more like, it's better as a reactive card, right? It can't be used as a proactive card. You're always reacting, and if you're reacting, it's better if you're in a defensive position.
I think there's a couple things about this card that really appeal to me. The first one is that, as you mentioned, it's the possibility of a 2-for-1. So in a correct board state situation where you've built your deck properly and this card is being taken full advantage of, it's better than all the cards I just mentioned. It is better than all of those. The cards that have the ability to do that traditionally are cards that cost 1 more. So that's the cards we mentioned: Wing Shards in older formats, or Dispense Justice. Those are both 3-drops.
Yeah.
Those 3-drops that require you to have some other stipulation to have an opponent sacrifice 2 creatures. This one costs 2, which we all know the difference between a 2-drop and a 3-drop in Modern is everything.
Yeah.
I hate 3-drops for that reason. I love 2-drops for that reason. I like 2-drops and 4-drops. I do not like 3-drops. Because playing 2-drops on turn 4 is something that you do in Modern. The 4th turn of the game is so important that it being a 2-drop, allowing you to say, like, in a blue-white deck, have this and a counterspell open against like maybe a mono red deck or something like that. That's very relevant. That matters a lot in a way that it costing 3 makes it a lot worse. So I think that's a really interesting component of this card. I also like the fact that it has the upside, but the fact that it costs 2 on the front makes the card pretty playable to begin with. I think in Standard, this will definitely be a card.
Well, in Standard, it's very difficult to evaluate because we don't know how good the Gideons are. I mean, I think in a world with no Gideons, this card is pretty niche, even in Standard. Like, actually, I think it's more niche in Standard. Like, in older formats like Legacy and Modern, there's more decks that are able to like ride one powerful threat to victory, like one Tarmogoyf just beats your opponent down until they die, or one Celestial Colonnade beats your opponent down until they die, or an Inkmoth Nexus that you pumped a bunch of times, or a Death Shadow, because you have these like powerful cards that can carry the game all on their own. And in Standard, there's less of that. It's like I attack my opponent with a Merfolk Branchwalker and a Hydroid Krasis and Jade Light Ranger or something, because like you don't just have like one single card that can just win the game and you can back it up with spells. But that's much more common in like Modern and Legacy. And in Legacy, you see a lot of people playing like Diabolic Edict and stuff like that, in part because it deals with cards like, Dark Depths and whatever. But, like edicts are better when your opponent has fewer creatures. And this is an edict. It's more conditional because you can only hit an attacking creature. But
Right.
A lot of those decks that are just attacking with one big threat, like one big Inkmoth Nexus or one big Slippery Bogle, are only playing like one threat. And what's interesting is like
12 creatures off.
So Bogles is known for like playing around stuff like Liliana the Veil, which is the most popular edict in Modern, because they can like fetch up Dryad Arbor. But because this stipulates that it has to be an attacking creature, they can't like attack, you play it, and they fetch up Dryad Arbor, but Dryad Arbor is not attacking, so you get their creature. And what's nice is even if they know you have this and they try and play around it, if you have a Gideon in play, even attacking with a second Bogle or a second Dryad Arbor or something to try and like dodge it, if you have a Gideon in play, they sacrifice both anyway.
And also on the flip side of it, if you're being more aggressive and you play this card, and we're going to talk about in a second some brews, some ideas of actually how to play this card. But for instance, if you're up against a Bogles deck and they have like you're in some 1-for-1 board situation where they have like a gigantic Bogle with like an Armadillo Cloak type of effect on it, and you attack with something that basically they have to block, otherwise it's very, very bad for them. Let's say it's like an infect creature, or it's just a big creature of your own. a double strike creature, something in like a Death Shadow Team or Battle Rage type of deck. The fact that you know that at instant speed, as soon as they block, you can blow that thing up. Again, same deal. It's a relevant card. This being an instant speed, say versus the sorcery speed of Oust, I think is also very relevant. It makes it so I don't know how good this card will be. Like in a regular blue white control deck, I think I would still probably take Collective Blessing. I can't imagine this card being better than that.
Well,
unless you were leaning into Gideon.
That's the thing is like Collective Blessing is good in part because of its modal, but the other modes are pretty low impact. They're like very rarely worth a card.
Like gain 4 life or tap a creature.
Untap up to 2 creatures you control.
Okay, yeah.
It might be any 2 creatures, but I'm having trouble thinking of a situation where you'd want to untap your opponent's creature. But yeah, it untaps up to 2 creatures, gains 4 life, sacrifice a creature, and you can choose another one of those modes for 4. So you have the potential.
Image.
Sure. You have the potential.
I'll untap my creature, untap your Phantasmal Image.
I mean, Phantasmal Image does get played in Modern, so that's fair.
It's real.
In the like Aether Vial decks. But more commonly, you're like using it to make them sacrifice a creature, and then you can pay an extra 2 mana to gain 4 life sometimes. But this card, rather than having to pay 2 mana to get 4 life, you need a Gideon in play instead of the 2 mana, which is more difficult for sure. But you like get another card worth of value out of it rather than the 4 life, which, you know, in exactly the burn matchup, the 4 life is more relevant. And its target player gains 4 life. So sometimes in the Death Shadow matchup, you want to make them gain life to kill a shadow. You can like make them gain 4 life and then their shadow dies and then they have to sacrifice Grimag Angler or whatever. But
yeah, right.
That's a little bit more niche.
Ooh, does the life gain happen early? Is it above? Because I know the effects of those modal spells happen in the order that they're on.
I think I probably said it. I think it's probably they sacrifice first and then you gain 4 life, if I recall correctly. But
So it's a good card. It's an interesting card, and I think it lends itself especially well to a Gideon deck. So coming up in just a second, Michael and I are going to talk about some actual Gideon deck designs that are going to utilize Gideon's Triumph in an awesome, awesome way. But before we do, there's going to be an ad roll you guys are going to hear right now, and then we're going to talk about a sweet contest giveaway. You guys should stay tuned because it's going to be really, really awesome. What's up, guys? Masters of Modern here. I'm Ben Bateman.
I'm Alex Kessler.
And we've got a couple quick shout-outs for you guys that we wanted to remind you of on this episode. The first one is Twitter, at the MMCast. We've had a Twitter for years. It's a great place to interact with us. We post exclusive images of our brand new spoiler cards, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out at the MMCast. It is a great way to support the show. Kess, where can the folks find you personally?
I'm at Kess Wiley.
You guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media. The second thing is we have a YouTube. You may be watching this right now, honestly. You might be listening to it. But one of the big pushes for us in 2019 is to build this YouTube channel. We want to get more eyes, more ears, bigger guests, better episodes, higher production quality. We even hired a producer right now, so you might even see the camera angles changing. Subscribe, like, comment. It's going really well so far, and honestly, if you guys support it, even if you're an audio listener already, it's a huge thing you can do to help us grow this. The third thing, and maybe the most important thing for our long-term health, is patreon.com/theMMCast. Guys, this year is going to have a ton of cool rewards for you. We really want to make the Patreon feel special, and it's a great way to help us grow. Our ability to hire the producer, to get new gear, to do anything cool in the future is going to be dependent on our ability to actually pay for it. Because right now, Alex and I are just paying out of pocket for the show. You know, we love it, but that's what we're doing.
Well, and the producer will help us kind of make sure we stay on stuff on Patreon, so it'll be a really thriving community.
Yeah. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is the Command Zone. Jimmy Wong, Josh Lee Kwai, these guys helped us start this thing. Collected.company is where you can find their stuff. They're seriously the most professional Magic people in the world, not named Ben and Alex.
Yeah, they make awesome content every week. Commander Focus, they do game nights, they do the Command Zone is obviously the podcast, the sister podcast of the MMCast. Check them out, Collected.company. It's the same place you can find our episodes every week as well.
And the last thing is if you guys want to check out a great community, check out the Facebook group, the Masters of Modern. There's a ton of people in there. It's very interactive. There are constantly threads about new decks, new conversations. It's very active. Check it out. That's Facebook, the official Masters of Modern group. And otherwise, let's get back to the show.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
And we are back. So coming up right now, we are going to give you guys some sweet, sweet deck tech action. But before we do, I want to talk to you about a giveaway. We just previewed Gideon's Triumph. It's our preview card. We're very excited about it. You saw it up on the screen a second ago. And because of that, Alex, Michael, Marshall, and myself would like to do a contest giveaway. And this is a good one. What you get if you satisfy the conditions I'm about to mention in 1 second is one of every single Gideon. That is 6 Gideons, including Kithion, the little 2-1 sucker. He's great. I actually love that card, to be honest.
I mean, Savannah Lions has come a long way, that's for sure.
That card's really good. That card's like legitimately good. But so you have Kithion Battleforged. You have Gideon of the Trials, which is maybe the best one. You have Gideon Ally of Zendikar, probably the argument for the other best one. Gideon Jura, also very good. That dominated Standard when it was in. You have Gideon, what's it called? Marshall Paragon. I think that was a 6-drop, right?
It's a 5-drop.
It's a 5-drop.
It's from the intro deck, so it's not very good.
It's a little
but
underpowered.
it provides the complete Gideon package, and it also goes in Marshall's Marshall deck.
It's true. I'm just waiting for a legendary Marshall. There was Audric Lunarch Marshall, and that was enough to almost push me to it.
But yeah, I don't know if this has been mentioned on the show before, but Marshall is trying to put together a deck using all of the cards that say Marshall.
Because his name is Marshall.
You got
Right, I
Marshall
want a
Coup,
commander.
you got Audric Lunarch Marshall, you got Field Marshall, because a lot of them are soldiers.
Marshall Law, Glory,
So,
Marshall Glory.
Guys, we've gone on a tangent here, and that tangent has almost ignored perhaps the best version of the worst Gideon ever printed, which is Gideon. Do you want to say it for me? The bad one. I can't. Even remember.
Gideon Champion of Justice.
Champion of Justice
from Gatecrash.
Yes, I actually spent the last 24 hours as I was thinking about this episode, assuming that Gideon Champion of Justice costs 3 in my mind because it's so bad and it was still unplayable. And then when I realized today I was going to have to talk about it, I actually looked at the card and realized that it costs 4.
It does cost 4, yep.
The design on Gideon Champion of Justice is so preposterously bad. The fact that minus 15 exiles all their permanents, but in theory to get your Gideon to the point that he is so big you can attack, but you have to minus 15 him to clear the rest of the board. What's he going to be at, like 22? You have to get your Gideon so big. If he gets to exactly 15, he's gone. If he gets to 17, now you're attacking with a 2/2. Like, that card is, it's astounding. And I love Forbidden Orchard. It's a Forbidden Orchard card. I want to play it in a Forbidden Orchard deck. Anyway, we're giving that one away, as well as all the other ones. So you get one of every single Gideon.
Don't forget, you get a Gideon of the Trials and a Gideon Ally of Zendikar. Let's bring it back there before people get excited. To get people excited.
The flip Gideon.
Yes, you will get one of every single one of the Gideons. The 6 cards available. Alex and I will send those to you. So here's what you got to do if you want to win the Gideons. There are 3 conditions. You only have to satisfy one of them, but for each one you satisfy, you get another entry into the pool. Number 1. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is what you're probably watching this on right now. Maybe you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed. Go subscribe. All you got to do is click subscribe, and you get entered in to win all the Gideons, including Gideon Champion of Justice. Leave an iTunes review. This is April 1st today. If you leave an iTunes review after today, April 1st or later, you will be entered in until this contest wraps. So go check that out. You get another entry if you do that. And the last one, leave a comment on this YouTube video, letting us know how excited you are about the channel. Whatever you want to say, honestly. You can be rude. We'll probably delete the comment. But if you just write something, you still get entered into the contest. 3 different entries get you 3 different entries to the contest. So do those things if you guys want to win a bunch of sweet Gideons. We're giving that away. We want to thank you guys so much for watching the show and listening to the show. And we are really, really excited to give back to you guys. So that's what you'll be getting. And we're back after that talking about our Gaggle of Gideons giveaway. I hope you guys are excited about that. Please enter in there. Michael and I are here to talk to you guys about a Gideon deck. Really a Gideon's Triumph deck. I mean, that's really what this is about, but it's going to include Gideon. Spoiler. So at one point, I brewed this sweet deck, and then Alex brewed this deck, and they're kind of in the same family. They're just a little different. So this is Gideon Control is what Alex calls this. It's a 3-color, like Gideon Jeskai control deck. The one I brewed, you guys may remember this. It was like 6 months to a year ago, I think. And it was basically a Gideon of the Trials Jeskai Delver deck that was playing a bunch of Pacts and Angel's Graces and things like that.
To take advantage of Gideon of the Trials 0 ability?
Yes, that's exactly right. And the Gideon of the Trials 0 ability, that if you have a Gideon Planeswalker, you have an emblem that does not allow you to lose the game. I found that the 3 colors, the low CMC, and the fact that you wanted to leave mana up for interaction in that deck made it hard to play that Gideon. It was better to have Angel's Graces.
I remember I played against that deck a few times when you were testing it out, and yeah, it seemed...
It won some games. Actually, I think some of the games I won were against you, which is sweet. But
we were playing Chance for Glory as well, right? Take an extra turn or something like that.
I think I was playing one of them. And
Or Glorious End.
Yes.
Glorious End, that's the one I'm thinking
Chance for
of.
Glory wasn't printed yet. Glorious End I might have been playing.
Glorious End.
The version I was playing like it was awesome. It was like Pact of the Titan and Snapcaster Mage and Angel's Grace, and like the whole idea was you could go like Delver turn 1, untap, hopefully flip your Delver, and then you could end of turn Pact of the Titan, Snapcaster Mage, Pact of the Titan, and if you had Angel's Grace in hand, you could like untap, stifle the trigger or whatever, and attack for 10. That was the best play because, like, actually, no, it was attack for 15 on turn 2, right? 4, 8, 2 from the Snapcaster. So 13. Yeah. Attack for 13 on turn 2. Or turn 3. Whatever. It was fun. It was a fun deck. It was not very good. I played it a bunch.
Ben Bateman is unimpressed with 13 damage on turn 3.
It was
Is
just
it
like,
Phoenix? Playing Is It Phoenix has ruined you for all these other brews now.
Is the Phoenix is just doing that except way better. It costs like 2 cards instead of your entire hand. Decks like that I would build are like consistently would just like get thought seized and then just like, ugh, this is the worst.
They took the Angel's Grace. I have all these blank packs in my hand.
Exactly. Well, the deck played like Trick Bind, which was really fun because you could like play a Delver and then like Trick Bind to fetch land and sometimes just ride that to victory. The deck was really fun, honestly, and I would still recommend like messing around with that concept. I remember that some people sent lists in, but that was the version I built.
Can you trick bind a pact trigger? Oh.
But
No,
only one. So if you've snapcasted your pact.
Yeah. There was a bunch of interesting stuff going on. Like, and I remember like I think at one point I tried out like Niv Magus Elemental in the deck as like a way to like get extra value.
Oh, like if you don't have a way to stifle the pact trigger, you just eat your pact.
Yes, exactly. Like there was some interesting stuff there. It just was too easily disruptible and couldn't close the game out fast enough. So anyway, that was the version I built. The version Alex built here is a little more of a control shell, so we're going to go down the list here and talk about it. It plays 4 Snapcaster Mage, 4 Pact of Negation, 2 Pact of the Titan, 4 Angel's Grace.
So it's got the Pact Angel's Grace package that was in your deck.
Yep, he's got the 4 Lightning Bolt that I was also playing, 4 Path to Exile, 2 of the new card, Gideon's Triumph. We've got 1 Logic Knot, 4 Gideon of the Trials, 2 Gideon Ally of Zendikar, 1 Jace the Mind Sculptor. It's got 1 Gideon Jura, 2 Teferi Hero of Dominaria, and then a bunch of lands, including 3 Celestial Colonnades and 2 Field of Ruins. That's the list. So it's kind of a control list. First off, Michael, do you think Alex is any good at building decks? He's not here. It's April Fool's Day. We can talk as much. Just kidding. Do you? How do you like this deck? Do you think that the card Gideon's Trial, Gideon's Triumph fits well into the deck?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gideon the Trials is the natural friend of Gideon's Triumph because it's cheap. It's the cheapest Gideon, and it also is the most defensive because of its +1 that like plays strictly defense. I mean, Gideon Jura is also defensive, but he costs 5 mana. Another thing that I think is interesting about like a blue-white Super Friends type deck like this is that Teferi untaps 2 mana, which is how much you need to cast this card. So like 2 mana instants are always decks. You want to make sure in your Teferi decks that you have a good number of 2 mana instants. I mean, like obviously the decks that are playing Teferi also end up playing like Cryptic Command and stuff like that. But cards like Logic Knot and, what's the Lightning Helix and Gideon's Triumph and stuff like that always make sense to me in Teferi decks. And, you know, if you're playing like a blue-white Super Frenzy type thing with some Gideons and some Teferis, then I think this is a card that really makes sense in a shell like that.
Yeah, I might cut down to like 1 less Pact of Negation and maybe play like... I'd want to find room for like 2 either like remands or different 2 mana counterspells because it feels a little light on your ability to counter spells. Because I think also playing a 3 mana Gideon, a 4th land, and then having 4 mana open is kind of where you want to be with this deck. You want to be able to play 2 spells on that turn. And so Pact of Negation is sweet, but sometimes just playing Pact of Negation, like you don't want to have to wait the extra turn to play it or like burn 2 cards to get a free counterspell when actually you just have mana open, and playing a Logic Knot or even like a Mana Leak would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, Remand seems really good in this, especially with as many Planeswalkers as this deck is playing. What is your feelings on Oath of Teferi?
That's the one that makes 2 1/1s and your Planeswalkers enter with an extra.
That's Oath of Gideon.
Oath of Teferi is a 5 mana enchantment, which is I think disqualifies it, but when it enters the battlefield, you exile target permanent you control. I think it comes back on the end step. Maybe it comes back immediately, but it flickers a permanent, and then a permanent you control, and then you can activate all of your Planeswalkers twice.
Oh,
it's a legendary enchantment.
Let's look it up real quick. Let's just
sure.
make sure.
While you're looking it up, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this deck list. I think that like a Jeskai shell like this, even a more controlling Jeskai shell that's like not playing Lightning Helix, like playing less burn and playing more Planeswalkers, I still feel like I would rather just be playing Lightning Bolts or you're playing Lightning Bolts, but I'd rather be playing like Lightning Helixes over the Gideon's Triumph. I think where Gideon's Triumph really shines to me is just in a blue-white shell where you're like aiming to have more consistent mana, take less damage from your lands, and you're you're looking for like that 5th Path to Exile, because the decks that have historically played like Condemn or Oust or Blessed Alliance are typically like, I mean, not always, because there was a time when Death Shadow was on top where like everybody was playing Blessed Alliance. But like these days, you'll typically see those in like blue-white decks where they have their 4 Path to Exiles and they're just looking for a 5th or a 6th or a 7th removal spell, because you don't have a lot of options in blue-white, and you definitely want something instant speed or at least cheap enough like Oust that you can play it and hold up counter magic. And so I feel like with red, looking at this list, I kind of would rather the Gideon's Triumph just be Lightning Helixes, because they allow you to go to the face. You can burn your opponent out, especially since this deck is playing Pact of the Titan. I think that maybe there is like a cute Pact of Negation, Angel's Grace little combo thing that could exist, but I just think that if that exists, it's probably not playing Gideon's Triumph, especially because Pact of the Titan is like a more proactive card. Like you can flash in a blocker and block, but I mean, generally you want to be using it to burn your opponent in the face.
I wonder if the version of this deck, I wonder if Gideon's Triumph is better in the version of the deck that I was building in the first place. If we increase the land count a little bit and make it a little bit more tempo.
Well, that deck was aggressive as well. I mean, I think that like giving up a bunch of tempo by allowing your opponent to block and then killing your creature rather than playing proactive removal like Lightning Helix just doesn't seem like it makes sense to me. And I feel like a deck with like 4 Path, 4 Bolt, 4 Lightning Helix is just not in the market for another 2-mana removal spell.
Yeah, I feel like what if this just leaned heavier into a more traditional blue-white control build, where
that's
you
where I would
sit
put
on
this card.
remand. Like, yeah, on turn 2, you like play your second land and you sit on remand, but if they are running out a Goblin Guide or they manage to get Phoenix going and send a couple Phoenixes at you,
Yeah,
then you have this as just a edict, but then you could theoretically follow it up the next turn with your Gideon of the Trials and have
Let me go to a different direction on a deck that's not listed here.
Yeah, of course. This is we printed out Alex's deck since he's not here, so we could have it for reference.
The version of the deck that I was thinking of before we sat down, and I didn't get to put it into a list, is playing a white-red Prison Gideon deck that's playing this card.
Okay, I like the idea of this.
And I think you're playing Blood Moons and you're playing like Magus of the Moon. You're doing kind of what the white, like the mono red or the white red Prison decks have done.
Like the Sun and Moon decks where they're playing like Chalices and Nahiri and Elspeth and stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe Gideon's instead of Elspeth, I guess.
I think maybe actually what you're doing is, instead of going so hard to try to get your Chalices down, I think maybe you allow them to have their 1-drops. You don't go so turbo, and you just play kind of like a white-red control deck that's just playing Blood Moons. Maybe you don't even play Magus of the Moon. I'm not even sure. But like this deck is probably playing like a Johnny Vengeant along with all of its Gideons. You could I don't know if you'd want an Angel's Grace in the deck as well. I'm not really sure how it would work, but I definitely think
Angel's Grace is really only good when you're playing a big pile of pacts, and even then it's like not as good as like Ad Nauseam. I mean, Angel's Grace, I think there's a reason that Angel's Grace doesn't show up a lot. Like Gideon of the Trial's ability to like stifle your pact triggers doesn't mean that you have to be playing like a packed Angel's Grace package in your deck. That was just a concept that, you know, we've explored on the show before, so I think it's worth mentioning. But this red-white deck sounds like it just doesn't want pacts and doesn't want Angel's Grace.
Well, imagine a situation
Gideon of the Trials is just a good card in the deck.
Imagine a situation where on turn 3 because Pact of Negation, if I remember correctly, Pact of the Titan, if I remember correctly, does it cost 5 or 3 to pay for the cost?
5.
It costs 5?
The cost of a Fomori Nomad, which is what it makes.
Yeah. So it's a little dicey because like what you want to do is you want that cost to be 3 there, you know, not 5, because you want to be able to play a Blood Moon and then make a 4/4 that same turn and pay for it the next upkeep, and that's not going to happen in this deck. And in that sense, like, you have to wait a long time to get your game plan going to actually win, which is where I don't know if Angel's Grace really does fit into the deck. But I do like the idea of just like all Gideons with a Johnny Vengeant and then Blood Moon and like removal cards, just like pads and this card.
Yeah, well, so the reason that I was thinking you might go in a Chalice direction is because those red-white prison decks that are playing Chalice, and they're like playing Simian Spirit Guide even to try and like power out a Chalice or power out a Blood Moon, a lot of times they're looking for like 2-mana removal spells that,
The
that
fact
kill
this
a variety of
costs
things.
2 is really, really relevant.
Right, because those decks can't play Path, they can't play Lightning Bolt. A lot of times they'll play Lightning Helix and they'll play like a Braid, or, you know, they'll try and like get around this restriction. But this is an unconditional removal spell that costs 2. I mean, not unconditional, but
they have to attack or
it
block.
it is a removal spell that doesn't care about the size of their creature. So a lot of times, you know, you'll be facing down like a Gurmag Angler or something, and you're looking at a handful of Lightning Helixes, and lightning bolts or something like that. And this will deal with that. And it does kill a blocking creature. So in the red-white prison deck where like you're hoping to lock them out and then kill them by like attacking with Gideon or something, having them like have one big creature that you can't burn out, just like getting in the way of your Goblin Rabble Master or whatever, you could just kill it.
Now, what about playing this, if we're going to continue to kind of theorize on different Gideon decks we could be playing, what if you're playing a Gideon Tokens version that wants to play Gideon Ally of Zendikar, it wants to play, I guess, Ally of Zendikar makes you a 2/2, and it also makes you an Anthem, correct?
Yep.
So you want to probably play that one.
That's really the only like go wide Gideon. Most of the Gideons just get in themselves.
You
play
play
Kithian.
You can play you play Kithian in that deck. My idea here is that if you're playing in sort of a tokens deck, you're inevitably going to be attacking with 1/1s that your opponent is totally fine blocking, and they're going to block with 2 of them, and then you're going to play Gideon's Triumph, and you're going to 2-for-1 them. And that's where I think that this card would shine in that deck. So again, you could be in a more aggressive Gideon Blood Moon White Red deck, same kind of thing. That's totally comfortable being aggressive and making tokens and playing Gideons and just trying to end the game that way, and you're happy to play a Blood Moon on turn 3.
Yeah, I've always been interested in the application of Kithian in both some sort of humans build, because he's a human before he flips, and then every Gideon turns into a human when they animate, for whatever that matters. But I think I've just always been excited about the idea of like, playing a turn 1 Kithian into turn 2 like Goblin Guide, or Goblin Guide and some other like hasty 1-drop, so I get the turn 2 Gideon Battle Forged.
Yeah, I mean, they've printed a lot of Savannah Lions since Alpha because, Savannah Lions is such an iconic card, and this Kithian is definitely the best one. It's just like we haven't really had a home for Savannah Lions in Modern yet.
And obviously you play Windbrisk Heights in this deck, because Windbrisk Heights is just the land-friendly version of Kithian.
And Legion's Landing is also plays fun in this as well.
Legion's Landing is a very nice 1-drop.
Sweet. It makes the 1/1 lifelinker, and it flips over with 3 or more creatures attacking, right?
And with Kithian, you want 1-drops because you want to be playing 2 1-drops. You want to play Kithian on turn 1 and then 2 1-drops on turn 2. So on turn 3, you can swing with all 3 and get your flip.
The other thing I like too is that you can make Kithian indestructible for 3, which is also the cost of a Blood Moon. So post combat on turn 3, you just slam Blood Moon if they like they're trying to bait you into doing it, but you just don't do it, and then you just cast Blood Moon, and they're like, remove your Gideon, except I just lose now because I've been Blood Mooned. I like that. That seems really fun. Sweet. So those are kind of my thoughts on the decks that we have for Gideon. I don't totally think that I can think of a lot of other places to utilize Gideon. I guess let's do the crazy exercise here that I wanted us to do is there some way we can think of that Gideon Champion of Justice is a playable card? What's the deck? Collective brainstorm, guys.
So I think that it could be a win con in like an Ensnaring Bridge deck or something, because what Gideon of Champion of Justice wants is he wants your opponent to have a lot of creatures, but they can't be attacking him because he will die. He doesn't have any way to protect himself. That's the bad thing about the card, right? Is that he gets really big because he gets a loyalty for each of your opponent's creatures. So he grows faster than almost any other Planeswalker in the format. Certainly bigger.
Looking him up here, yeah.
Yeah, certainly more than any other 4-mana Planeswalker, because he can potentially, against like a Humans or a Spirits or some deck going wide, he could be growing by like 5, 6 every turn. But they'll just kill him, because their creatures probably have more than 1 power, and they are going to attack him for more than he's going to grow. But if you can put him behind an Ensnaring Bridge or something like that, or like Magus of the Moat, if we want to get real spicy, all that card sucks. But
card is bad, yeah.
Some way to...
But so is Gideon Champion of Justice, so peas in a pod,
So we're playing our bad 4-drop white tribal.
Yeah, so some way to keep him from getting killed so that he can grow unchecked. And then he exiles all permanents, including the Ensnaring Bridge, and then he can start killing your opponent when they have no permanents.
It's debatable that Gideon Champion of Justice has the coolest art of any Gideon.
I concur. I think it's either him.
He's looking pretty badass. Definitely very action hero.
Looks really cool.
I think Gideon Battle Forge, the backside of Flip Kithian is my favorite. Oh, well, there's also the SDCC promos on there.
Oh, well, I don't think promos count.
No.
Speaking of sweet promos, I just bought the Routing of Mythic edition of Dak Faden. Because I needed to get cards for Highlander, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, because that seems like a really good thing to talk about, because I'm excited about it. And it's great. But I just bought one because we have to have real cards now, because there's going to be stuff coming out with it soon. and I was like looking online. I was like, regular Dak Faden is like $17, I think, or maybe 15.
Have you announced that yet?
What? What's going on with it?
Yeah.
No, we're gonna be talking about it in just a second.
Oh, cool.
And I'm
Okay.
really excited
Yep.
about it. And I looked up the Mythic Edition, and it looks so dope. It's so cool.
Yeah,
looking.
it's really good.
And it was $47. I was like, there's almost no way, unless this card gets reprinted into the ground, that in 2 years that's not like $200. Like, that's a really good card, and it's a good card in every single format. Back to vintage.
Well, as was part of the
Commander.
discussion last week, it's contender for best blue-red card, right?
Yeah, which is going to be next week's episode, by the way, which is the best card
Last
in
week. That was
every
last week.
single guild.
You did that last week.
We did that last week because this is being recorded out of order.
We can just take it again.
And Dak Faden, nah, I don't care. Leave in the mistakes. Dak Faden is that's the best blue-red card ever printed on both of our lists because that card is insane. Anyway, so yeah, I think Gideon Champion of Justice, I think you're probably right. I was thinking like, is there some sort of way that Gideon Champion of Justice fits into the old Hunted Horror, Hunted Handsome deck that I had built from a few years ago? So for those of you that are newer to the show or don't remember, there was a time when I would build ridiculous brews, actually buy the real cards, and go to Grand Prix and play them. That time has passed. Just kidding. I'm gonna keep doing that.
Now that I day 2'd a Magic Fest, I'm never coming back.
No. It was really fun though, doing that, and I just haven't done it in probably a year or a little less than, because my last one was such a train wreck. But there was a deck from years ago called Haunted Ansem that I built that was before the legendary rule changed, where all versions of a creature would die or permanent would die at the same time. What's that? A static effect? State-based?
State-based action, yeah.
State-based action, where if you had two permanents that were the legendary subtype in the same name, they would both cease to exist simultaneously. So you would start the game with the Leyline of Singularity, which is the blue Leyline that makes all permanents legendary. Then you would play a Hunted Horror on turn 2. You get a 7/7 trample, and the 2 3/3s your opponent would get would cease to exist. You would do this also with Hunted Phantasm, the 4/6 unblockable for 3, and all the 1/1s, the 5 they get would cease to exist. And you would have things like Blood Artist in your deck that would then trigger off of all the things that they had that were entering the battlefield and dying. It was really fun.
It was also a Forbidden Orchard deck, as Ben mentioned earlier,
Yes.
because if you gave them more than one spirit, all spirits would die because they were legendary.
It was awesome. It was really fun. The legendary rule kind of screwed it up. It's still fine, but they would keep one of the 2 3/3s. It just was a lot less good. My thought is, a couple years later, Jeff Roberts, who's a frequent listener of the show, came up with a version of that deck that was utilizing that curse. Is it Curse of Misfortune or Curse of...
It's Curse of Trespassers or whatever, the one from Amonkhet, 2 mana, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under the cursed opponent's control, they lose 1, you gain 1.
Yeah, so there was a few cards printed that were interesting and kind of changed that deck up a little bit and made it less about... It made the deck less about the creatures you were attacking with and more giving your opponent the maximum number of creatures that would trigger. Suture Priest is another card that you would play. You gain life when creatures enter for you, and they lose life. It's a 2-mana 1/1. It's an interesting concept, and it lends itself really nicely to using Gideon Champion of Justice because you're giving your opponent a bunch of creatures and then blowing them up with stuff like Engineered Explosives or Ratchet Bomb effects, things like that.
I think it's important to note we've been bagging on Champion of Justice, but for our podcast listeners, we haven't actually said the full text of.
Oh, what it
We'll
does?
show it on the screen, right?
But
Isn't
for
that
the
what we do?
podcast, for the
The
audience.
podcast.
So Gideon
This
Champion
is
of
a
Justice.
podcast
As your
too?
podcast
All right.
producer, I have to remember the non-visual
Yeah,
audience.
Gideon Champion of Justice is white 2 for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker Gideon. +1, put a loyalty counter on Gideon Champion of Justice for each creature target opponent controls. 0, until end of turn, Gideon Champion of Justice becomes an indestructible human soldier creature with power and toughness each equal to the number of tokens or counters on your Gideon Planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. And -15. Exile all other permanents. That's
Including
the text.
lands. Including
Yes.
lands. That's the important bit.
Why do you think they, for a tall order like -15, why do you think they made it exile all of your stuff too?
Because this card's terrible.
It reads, I mean, it sounds cool.
A one-sided exile
All other permanents is cool. I mean, if you're the only person with a permanent on the battlefield, you're probably going to win. It's just how do you get there?
Also, I think the problem with exiling all of your opponent's permanents, if you can -15 Gideon, is that like there are some matchups where this card's totally unfun because it comes down in pluses to 15, and then if you can find some way to not have him attacked, you just win the next turn. Because there are going to be some decks that have like 7 creatures in play when you play him.
Yeah, but those creatures just attack him and kill him. I mean,
Well,
I guess you
I'm
could play
saying.
Fogs, maybe.
I think that if they had done it that way, it's exiling all permanents makes the post ultimate like way in your favor because you have a planeswalker, but like not just I win. Whereas like the flip side, but then again, minus 15 should just be I win.
Well, it's minus 15, but you're able to plus more than 1 or 2 per turn, theoretically.
Well, and I guess like the idea is that it's more expensive than the minus 15 that's implied, because as you said, if you want to win the game, he's got to be at least like 18 so he can animate into a 3-3 or something and close out the game.
Yeah. All right. I think that's enough conversation about Gideon Champion of Justice. We have exhausted the topic.
I think there was probably enough conversation about Gideon Champion of Justice before we started building decks.
So, guys, that is going to wrap up our deck building brew section of the show. Let's talk about this last thing. This is not the official announcement because the official details of this are not out there yet, and I kind of want to save them. But for a long time, we've talked about a format called Highlander Roulette. That's a thing. There are some details that are changing with that format that will all be premiered very soon. But Highlander Roulette, which classically is 6 decks, all built singleton, with 100 cards per deck, no repetitions between the 6 decks. The list of banned cards historically has been every single card with a foil version in print is what's legal. We are doing our best right now to take that to the masses. We're trying to find a way to run a sanctioned tournament at a Grand Prix. This has not been confirmed nor announced, so when that all happens, we'll announce it. But so you guys know, we're working really hard internally right now to find the right way to do this, the right name for the format, the correct ban list, all the things, small augmentations to what we've done, so that at a Grand Prix, at a Magic Fest sometime in the next year, hopefully there's going to be a sanctioned event where you could play against us and our Highlander wheels. We would all show up and register our deck lists and the whole thing. Oh my God, registered deck lists. That sounds like a nightmare. But it's going to be super fun, and we're really, really excited about it. So I urge you guys, if you're going to leave comments below because of the Gaggle of Gideons giveaway, it sounds so good, that we just announced a second ago, the Gaggle of Gideons giveaway, isolate. If you guys want to leave your comments below about Highlander Roulette and how excited you are and that you would love to see it, that's a great thing to leave your comments about, because there's going to be an official announcement coming very soon, possibly even next week. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about briefly.
So, Ben, for the
Exciting.
new listeners, why is it called Highlander Roulette?
Well, it's been called Highlander Roulette for a long time because in your 6 decks, you put your 6 down, usually in a lunchbox, because that's the preferred method of storing your decks.
Oh,
And
well,
they
I have mine in an 800 count box. 800 count box.
Okay.
With some padding.
Sweet. And I have mine in a grimoire currently. And you roll off a 6-sider, and the deck you play is one of those 6 decks versus the one they roll. And then in game 2, you roll out the remaining 5, and if there's a game 3, you roll off the remaining 4 decks.
It's funny because it's actually kind of similar to like the format from the Mythic Invitational this last weekend with the duo standard, where they they only have 2 decks instead of 6, but they like play one at random against their opponent's random deck. It's like a small scale Highlander Roulette match a little bit, right?
That's really fun. At the last of the tournaments that we run these Highlander tournaments every 3 months. We had one. It was a Ravnica Super Sealed. It was 1 pack of all 8 Ravnica sets, and you had to build 2 sealed decks. And you rolled off randomly game 1. The other one you had to play in game 2, and whichever of your 2 decks lost, you would play in game 3. So both players were playing their worst deck, or at least the deck they lost.
Yeah,
with.
that's the format of the Mythic Invitational that just happened.
Yeah, it was super fun. We had a great time.
We don't know anything about it because we're recording this before it happened. But for the listeners, it just happened.
It just happened. So yeah, stay tuned for that, guys. And a great thing to do if you want more information on Highlander, because I promise you, one way or another, Highlander is going to have its biggest moment in the sun in the next 6 months. We're pushing very hard right now. There's big things coming, stuff I want to announce, but I kind of can't. And it's all going to be out there really soon. And we're going to encourage all the listeners of this show to get on board and build a wheel and get with us, because it is the actual most fun format of Magic I've ever played. I mean, I love Modern, but Highlander Roulette is my favorite format ever. So we're working on that, and that's the thing. I think that's going to wrap up the show this week. Michael, do you have anything you want to plug?
Nope.
All right, sweet. Marshall, anything you want to plug?
Nope. Just like, subscribe, share the show with all of your friends.
Yeah, like, subscribe, comment, all the things. Patreon.com/TheMMCast is how we keep going. We did mention the Gaggle of Gideons giveaway, so one more time, if you forgot the details, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment on this video, or give us a review and rating on iTunes, April 1st or later. All 3 of those things get you an entry into the contest to win all 6, including Kithion, Gideon Planeswalker cards. We're going to be shipping them out to whoever we randomly select. It'll be one person from all of those different entries. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and we'll be back same time, same place next week with more Magic content. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for your attention. See you later, alligator.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.